So we're recording, guys. Make sure you have some sort of writing material or something along the lines. If you have any questions, we can go through it at the end of the presentation. I'll go ahead and pop my video for you guys. So my name is Victor Hernandez. Nice to meet everybody. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I am a work study assistant at the Makers Lab, and I was the vice president of the Makers Club for the year of 2019 to 2020. So we're going to go over some of the more focused presentation that we went over, like a broad overview of the lab since last Tech Tuesday. This is just going to be more focused and more direct things of what we offer now and the sort of projects that we're doing currently and how we can connect with you guys out there at MDC. I also have here Ralph Provocero, who is the supervisor of the Makers Lab. Ralph, do you want to say some kind words to these gentlemen?
Hi, my name is Ralph Provocero. I am the manager of the Makers Lab here at Wolfson campus. And you're in the very capable hands of my student assistant, Victor. So go ahead, Victor, and then I'll follow up.
All right, perfect. So we'll just go ahead and get started then. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started from the beginning. So this is the Makers Lab and Makers Club Tech Tuesday presentation. Again, I hope everyone's having a wonderful day. My name is Victor Hernandez. So let's go ahead and get started. From the beginning, the Makers Lab is a creative problem-solving space where we can take your ideas and just kind of produce them into an actual design and take a physical structure, physical shape here. We are in room 1164, building 1 of Wolfson campus. We're open from Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. And we'll talk a little bit more about how the Makers Lab works with students. For the longest time, we were doing appointment-based only throughout COVID, but now we're opening up again. And this is kind of like a nod back to how we used to do before 2019, before COVID, where we would just have people walk in and enjoy the space as a creative problem-solving location that not a lot of campuses would offer. We would get together and brainstorm with other people about all sorts of things like designs, architecture, engineering, fashion, and the list goes on and on. It was a really great space to just kind of go and just produce the things that you were thinking about and help with any sort of projects and kind of progressing you through your career and your majors that people were studying. Go back for a little second here. We have a lot of capabilities that we offer. In the last Tech Tuesday, we spoke about some of the projects that we had done previously, like a F1 race car, which you can see in this picture is being built. We've had some NASA collaborations, some MIT collaborations, and in general, we do work with pretty much any field of study that has a passion for creative problem solving or design. We have architecture students, fashion students, engineering, bioengineering, medical. The list really varies, and there is no limit to what we can and cannot work with. We work with pretty much everybody. I mean, you can be a music student or a theater student and have great benefit from the lab. This is just a general space for students to come in and take their designs to the next level. We don't really have, there is no offering of a payment or anything like that in the lab. This is completely free for students and faculty, and we encourage everyone who has some sort of design idea or even a want to just kind of expose themselves to, a more varied form of learning, kind of getting your hands dirty, as you might say, to work and get your ideas out there. It is really encouraged for anybody to come to the lab and check it out. But again, we do work with pretty much any field of study. And some of the things that we do offer are things like 3D printing and laser cutting, as well as different forms of CNC, woodworking. We have all kinds of metal machines, things like metal benders, drills, metal CNCs. We have welders, and the list pretty much just goes on to the things that we can do. We'll start with some of the most popular things that we have running in the lab. That would be 3D printing. We have some of the most capable 3D printing devices at MDC. We definitely have some of the most that are currently functional, like sets of 3D printers. We use Prusas. We use Rise 3D printers. We've had different ones like MakerBots and all that stuff, Cube Pro. But the ones that we work with currently are Prusas and Rise. They have an 8x8 inch printing bed. The Rise has a little bit of a larger printing bed. I don't know if anybody's asking questions. I can't see because I'm doing the PowerPoint, so we'll go through it towards the end. So yeah, we have a varied size of printing bed. Our typical one is an 8x8 inch Prusa bed, which is these are the most common ones that we use. We like to work with different programs for 3D printing, like the Prusa design. We use Fusion 360, and we work with the students and faculty to kind of develop their ideas even further. As you can see on the screen, we have a few different things that we have printed before. We have an architecture model. We have a skull that was made for an anthropology class. We have a uh, that is a lens holder for a biomedical microscope. We also made resin printed birds for a bird garden. And these are all different kinds of prints that we use. As you can see, these are different forms of prints. The one to the left, the bird, is a resin print. It's a lot smoother, something more related to the sort of plastic you would see on a general basis. And then we have PLA to the right, like the skull and the uh, lens holder and the structure. The difference being with PLA and resin, a huge difference is in time and price that it takes to print with these. PLA is a lot more cost effective. A large roll of PLA may cost you like 20 bucks on Amazon, and it works for quite a while. But Prusas tend to take upwards of 8 to 7 hours, depending on the print that you're doing. If it's something sizable, it could be a lot faster than that. It really just depends on what you're printing. But most of the time, you'll see PLA that has these kind of textured, layered uh, designs on the things that they make. While a resin, since it's more of a liquid-based printing, it tends to be a lot smoother, a lot cleaner looking. But again, the materials do vary. Resin is a lot more expensive, while it can look a little bit nicer. You can always kind of going through that whole situation. And in general, we are able to print pretty much anything you can think of with the 3D printers, whether it be one full structure or in sections. We've had projects where we would make biomedical prosthetic arms. We had a project like that we spoke about in the last Tech Tuesday, and that was something that we printed by sections. So it wasn't just all one big print. Again, it's an 8x8-inch printing bed that we usually work with. So if it's a really big print, it's something that we do by sections, and we kind of just connect the pieces. We actually just finished working on a 737 Boeing airplane front panel. That was all a huge, huge print. It took a long time, but when it was finally done, it worked beautifully. And it was just something that we built by sections and put it all together. Not unlike the anthropomorphic head, which was just one solid print, this anthropology skull. But a big thing about 3D printing is that it's so popular among the students and faculty that it is really important to always come in time. That's kind of like the last point here. Always come with time. 3D printing can take, it varies in the things that we're trying to print. Sometimes it can take 1 hour, sometimes it can take 8 hours. And we only really work from 8:30 to 5. So it has to be somewhere within that time where you can come in, talk about the idea, and get it on the printing bed. But always note that there will be somebody else looking to take the printing bed for their ideas. And we usually work on a first come, first serve basis or a importance basis. So let's say if you have a personal project, sometimes that would have to take a back seat to where someone has to do a class project that would be due sometime soon. But again, always come with time. We usually don't like to take projects that are due the next day, since printing can have bumps along the road. Sometimes we need to change the filament. Sometimes we need to clean the printing bed. And sometimes we need to calibrate the printers themselves. So always come with time, be prepared. Usually when we do big prints, we would have to ask the student to get their own materials. We have a set of our own materials that are used for some classes that they have reserved for specific classes like architecture and anthropology. So usually when there's a big personal project, something that may take a lot of time, like the 737 Boeing panel, that was something that had the student use to get their own materials. So always keep that in note. The next thing we offer is laser cutting. And now laser cutting is huge in terms of fashion and architecture. This is something that we always offer. We try to always improve and have ready for the students, since this is a very, very famous thing that the lab offers. And in Miami in general, it is pretty hard to come by a laser cutting machine or a laser cutter in general. So the fact that MGC offers one for free for student and faculty is pretty amazing. It's something that should be taken advantage of, definitely. As you can see from the pictures, some of the things that we offer in laser cutting are etching and laser cuts for architecture, things like shingles on a rooftop or just walls and windows being cut out by the laser cutter. The top picture is actually a mixture of pretty much a lot of things that we offer, being design, creative ideas, laser cutting with the shingles on the walls, and even 3D prints for the pillars and the stairs. So, that's just kind of like a mixture of the things that we offered in the lab. A big user of the laser cutters is fashion. Fashion students can't get enough of the laser cutter. They come all the time, and we appreciate having such a solid fan base, I guess you could call it, of our laser cutter. They come in and they make their designs. Doesn't take too long. They can cut it out, etch it out. Etching meaning that it's just marked onto the material rather than actually cutting through it. A big, I guess, note to say of the laser cutter is that it can be extremely dangerous to cut certain materials like fiberglass, PVC, polystyrene foam, or polypropylene foam. These are some materials that may release gas or might be noxious for the people that are working in the room, and that is something that we will never have a laser cutter for. There are some materials that are reflective, like certain glass panels and sandpapers that have this sort of reflective agent that need to be either folded onto the other side where there is a sort of matte covering or artist tape, I guess you could say, that would cover that to make it easier for the laser to cut through. But there's always materials that we would always speak to the student before laser cutting about kind of the safety and the precaution of using some materials over others. Some materials that are really, really good for the laser is the ones on blue: leather, cotton, felt, fleece, denim, lace, linen, and silk. This is in terms of fashion. These are all materials that can get cut and etched with no problem. They don't release any gases. They work well on the laser, and it usually cuts fairly easily. In terms of architecture, I myself am an architecture student, so things like basswood, chipboard, matte board, museum board, plexiglass. These are things that can be cut fairly easily on the laser, and it will save an architecture student a whole lot of time instead of going through with a knife. I'm spacing out on the word right now. It'll save them a lot of time going in and cutting each of these by hand with their knives, just to kind of like save a lot of time. It makes it a lot cleaner. Sometimes when you're doing an architecture design, you get really like rough edges. You might have to sandpaper it after the fact, and it gets really, really messy. So the laser is a great feature to have. Again, very hard to come by in Miami at all. So the fact that MDC has one and it's so close and it's so available to students and faculty is a great feature. Next, we'll talk about some of the projects that we're going over currently. In the last Tech Tuesday, we talked about some of the projects that we had before. We had some NASA collaborations. We had MIT collaborations for biomedical engineering, prosthetic arms, the F1 car, which you can see here. And we also have the vertical garden, which we worked on before, which you might have heard of as well from MDC. But currently, we are working with a microgravity project. This is another NASA collaboration, working with how gravity works on a rocket engine and payload. This is currently being worked on by some of our student assistants, and it is an open project. So if anybody has any interest in coming in and collaborating, then it's still totally a thing that we're working on. This is one of our more like developed projects currently. This is some more pictures of the microgravity project, the rocket being built. These are all 3D printed, by the way, as well on the Cruces and the Rise. And we also offer Neo and Pepper. We just received these robots, Neo and Pepper from Robolab. They are a great tool for coding and robotic engineering. This is a great feature of the lab that we just got, and they're still being developed now. They work fairly well. It isn't incredibly hard to use it all, and if anybody's interested in coding or robotics or anything like that, this is a huge feature that the lab offers that it's still fresh with us, so it's being worked on every day. This is a learning experience for everybody. And we also offer workshops. We use coding, Arduino, and 3D printing workshops. The base workshops essentially for everything that we offer. In coding, if you want to work with Neo and Pepper. Arduino is in terms of the engineering design field, I guess you could say. And 3D printing, we work with Fusion 360. We teach people how to use their 3D printers, what materials to go and find. We go in more in depth about that. We offer talks about some of the programs that we personally use in the lab in terms of design and exporting files from the computer to a 3D printer, just kind of the whole process of getting the print done. And we offer the Makers Club. Now, the Makers Club has been running for a while. We have different events like Club Rush. We hold booths in a lot of different MDC events where we kind of talk about the connection between the club and the lab. And it's just a huge help to have the club be so close to the lab as well. It's a great way for students to kind of come in and always know kind of what's going on with the lab. Whenever there's an event or there's a workshop or anything of the sort, we usually go through the club first and we kind of spread out everything there. So if you want to know more about the Makers Lab in general, the Makers Club is like the heart and soul of that whole thing. Beyond just the Makers Club, we also offer a connection to a different club, the D&D Club. Actually, I didn't put it on this the slides because this is kind of like a Makers Lab focused thing, but just to kind of go off on a different club that we do often, we will have an event for just this Thursday, April 7th. We will have the D&D Club as kind of like a joint feature of the Makers Lab as well. They work with the Makers Lab in terms of printing miniatures, and it's just a space to hold for gatherings. I personally am the president of the D&D Club, so just kind of like a big heads up, this is a thing that's going on. The lab is a huge connection with the D&D Club. D&D, for anybody who doesn't know, is like the nerdiest game ever, but it's a lot of fun, a lot of storytelling and connections. The lab is great with printing sets of dice and miniatures that we use for this this game, D&D. It's a tabletop game. So yeah, D&D Club and the Makers Club. We also hold student life operations. We have, again, Club Rush. We have pizza sales. Always have information about the lab and the club open to the students. A huge way to connect to the lab in general through the club. Here are some QR codes you guys can use to actually get into the club and follow the Makers Wolfson Instagram page. I'm gonna leave that up there for a second. All right, just kind of hold that there. You always come back in the recording. And that will pretty much be the end of the presentation. We're going to go through questions right now. This is just a QR code to fill out a survey. If everyone's interested in these Tech Tuesdays and the talks, the presentations that we make, go ahead, feel free to fill out the survey. And we'll kind of have a more focused version of something that you want to see further, whether that be 3D printing, laser cutting, design, or any of the clubs that we spoke about. This is just a great way to let us know the things that most people are interested in, so we can kind of reach out and have a more focused view, kind of like get everybody on board the things that they're most interested in. Again, whether that be laser cutting, 3D printing, design, whatever that may be. I'll go ahead and leave that on the screen for a second there. And I think that should be good for the recording.
Thanks, Victor. Thank you, and I want to open this up for any questions you guys may have. I see, Maria, you're a nursing student, and you know, that's something that some people may think that that you may not have much to do with here, but there are plenty of things that you can explore here in biomedical world in the Makers Lab. So you guys, I'm opening it up for questions now, so go ahead, fire away.
I see Terry said that she loves D&D. I also love D&D. Good shout out.
Yeah, I didn't know you guys had a club. That's fantastic.
Yeah, we've had a club before COVID. Professor Augustin is the one that ran the club for a while. And then COVID happened and it got a little bit hard to kind of connect with everybody. It became a situation where we couldn't do it in person, so we had to just try to find ways around it. But now we're back up and running, and it's all hands on deck. So anybody who's interested in that is, always available.
Fun. Good to know. I'll pass on the word.
Absolutely. Let us know if you think of anything.
Again, just to reiterate as well, before I spoke about the beginning of the presentation, even though you may not be using a certain field like architecture, fashion, engineering, biomedical, whatever it may be, it is always a good thing to have, just in general, to connect with people who have different creative ideas and have a mindset to just kind of learn further. So I would say that's a big thing about the lab, is that some people might feel intimidated, or they might feel like they don't have really a spot in the lab since they don't focus on some major field. But it is, in general, at its core, just a creative learning space. So if anybody who has any passion at all to just follow any sort of creative design or anything like that, it doesn't have to be specific to a major, then it's a great place to do it in. Again, I am working on D&D in the lab, so that's just like my own example of that.
Yeah, and Maria, one of the collaborations that we had recently was with the MIT Co-Creation Lab, and it had to do with um, the medical industry and how we could make things easier. And it wasn't necessarily about making physical objects, but um, like how to make home care easier for some people that were about to need um, institutional care. So the idea was to try and make it like how can we figure out ways using technology to make it easier for people to stay at home and get um, and get nursing care or home health care, so that they don't have to go into an institution, so that they could receive that care either remotely, or by telemed somehow, or take care of a lot of eliminate a lot of the need for leaving the home. So that's one way that the medical field's impacted, or that we've kind of collaborated with the medical field. Um, so think of things if you're interested in investigating that kind of stuff. Let us know.
I can take this one. So the students are allowed to print pretty much anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be class related. Of course, there are going to be different like things that we would need to kind of like go over in terms of printing, whether that be acquiring materials for how big the print needs to be, or just in general like a design aesthetic of this whole thing. But it does not have to be class related. We can work on personal projects just the same. We're open for all students and faculty who are willing to get their ideas out there. It does not have to be class related. Again, I am an architecture student working on D&D stuff. Just a good example of that.
You're welcome to come down to the lab at any time. We're here in 1164 in the main building. Do you have questions for us, Carla?
We also have a recording ready, Carla, for anything that you missed. We'll have it up soon.
Nobody has any more questions?
I think that's it for now then.
Okay, so we're in 1164, like I said.
I'll put that here.
Come down and visit us if you are interested. Yeah, you'll know more once you get here, I think, and you can kind of see, and that's what it takes. Sometimes people have to walk through the door to kind of see the capabilities, and then things start to speak to them. Um, but come on down and talk to us. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming, guys. That is a huge feature of the lab as well. We can talk about the presentations all day, but sometimes it's just things that would be way better to just see in person and kind of get a feel for the room and feel for everything that we do. This is, again, we're open, so feel free to come down whenever you guys want. All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording now.